A Russian ballistic missile attack on Kyiv this morning has wounded at least 2 people as civilian casualties continue to mount on both sides of the Russia-Ukraine border. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is trying to get more international support as Russia continues its full-scale onslaught on his country. But a recent row with Poland risks undermining relations with one of Ukraine's most important allies. Poland stripped Zelensky of his state honour after he renamed a military unit in tribute to the Ukrainian insurgent army, a nationalist force that Poland holds responsible for the mass killings of Polish civilians during the Second World War. We're going to have more on that in just a moment. Poland's Prime Minister, had been calling for truth and mutual respect at this important summit that was being held, the Ukrainian Recovery Conference in Gdansk, which went ahead without the Ukrainian president there. Let's talk to Alina Frolova, who is Deputy Chair of the Centre for Defence Strategies and a former Deputy Minister of Defence for Ukraine. Hello, Alina.
Hi.
Really good to have you with us. Let me just ask you, first of all, why did President Zelensky refuse to go to that important conference in Poland?
Well, actually, we should say that he didn't visit all the conferences before. So we cannot say that this is like some kind of unusual practices. He visited some of them and didn't take a part in any other. However, we do understand that there is some political context behind, and probably that was the right decision not to escalate the political discussions which are going on between Ukraine and Poland. And we have quite a high level of representation. This is prime minister level, so I don't think that this is some kind of critical situation.
Well, the Polish president, Carole Walker, said that Ukraine's decision to name a unit after the Ukrainian insurgent army was outrageous and incomprehensible, because people are looking back to this force. Poland is accusing it of a force with the same name back during the last war as having carried out a genocide of ethnic Poles. Wasn't it a bit insensitive of your president to call a unit of the current Ukrainian army after that historic one?
In each and every history of every country, you always have some kind of troubles, historical troubles with bordering countries. And if we look back at those times, the problems like that exist in each history. And not only Ukrainians were making some kind of, let's not call it genocide, but some kind of violent actions towards Poles, but the Poles were doing violent actions toward Ukrainians, and we can find such examples in the history of France, Belgium, United Kingdom, whoever. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't recognize the role of this army in Ukrainian history and in history of the establishing the Ukrainian independence. And I think that this is like an entire Ukrainian story. And this is very supported and very appreciated role of this army in establishing independence.
But President Zelensky, sorry to interrupt you, but President Zelensky did return the Polish Order of the White Eagle, this medal that had been bestowed on him a few years ago. I mean, isn't it a problem if you've got this spat going on between Ukraine and one of its physical neighbours, Poland, a country that has been such a huge supporter of Ukraine in the war against Russia?
We do appreciate the support of Poland, and not only appreciate, we really do continue to know that Poland is our friend. But however, this was like a story which was started by Polish politics more than real problems in Ukrainian-Polish relations. And this is not the president who wanted to bring back this medal, but that was a president of Poland who actually made a decision to cancel the reward. That's why it was a logical step. We do not evaluate the Polish history, for example. We do not interfere into their names which they are given to their, like, I don't know, streets and units. And also of Army Craiova, for example, who was killing Ukrainians for many years, because we do understand that this is the history. And we are in current moment where the Poland is very important for us. So I think that we need to leave the history to historians, but to come to political developments between between our two countries.
Let me ask you about the ongoing war. There was a brilliant dispatch from Anthony Lloyd of The Times, who's been out there on the front line, and he was talking about the scale of the casualties which Ukrainian troops are inflicting on Russians, and making the point that perhaps now Ukraine is starting to make incremental gains on the front line. Is that your understanding of what is happening?
Well, actually, Ukraine is prevailing now on all the domains. We do still have this problem with Russians trying to hit the cities, the civilian infrastructure, and so on. But if we look at the military context, Ukraine prevails in air domain, where we at least not prevail, but to have a balance, where we do not let Russia to feel free at completely. We do prevail mainly on land domain. There are still tension in some spot lines of the front line, but this is like a 1-2 spots. This is not like 2,000 kilometers where Russians prevail. We keep them like out of the sea, and together with all the developments with the long and mid strikes, which Ukraine provides for the last period and hitting the Russian logistics and Russian infrastructure, I would say that in military component, Ukraine obviously prevailing now.
Alina Frolova, Deputy Chair of the Centre for Defence Strategies and a former Deputy Minister of Defence for Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.